you can create almost anything. You can do almost anything if you don't care who gets the credit. But there's one corollary to that, which I found fabulous, which I pass on to people when they use it, is that try to deflect credit. When someone says to you, Joe, you've done a great job, the first thing you should think about is who you can also name who's really responsible.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course. With insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today. Classic FitAid, new summer edition flavor. Hawaiian Nectar is a summer vacation for your taste buds with each sip. Take a one-way ticket to Recovery Town with this limited edition flavor. Certified non-GMO tested, vegan, paleo-friendly, certified gluten-free, kosher, and never contains any artificial flavors or sweeteners. The FitAid Recovery Blend features glutamine, glucosamine, turmeric, BCAAs, omega-3s, CoQ10, full B complex, and electrolytes. Perfect for after the race, gym, hiking, or biking. Visit lifeaidbevco.com and enter code Spartan20 at checkout to get 20% off. FitAid Hawaiian Nectar plus free shipping. FitAid, an official partner of the Spartan Race Series.
Joe De Sena here, host of the Hard Way podcast, formerly Spartan Up. I've got a great guest here, Ed Hajim. This guy is a master on pivoting in life. He's an author. He's an entrepreneur. He was kidnapped at 3 years old. Ed, welcome aboard.
Joe, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fill me in. Fill everybody in. You probably don't remember, or maybe you do from the stories. You were kidnapped at 3 years old. Tell us the story.
Well, it reads like fiction almost, and I basically buried it for almost 60 years. But when I got to be in my early 70s, my wife and my children put the arm on me to say, Ed, we want you to print this so we know what happened. Even my wife didn't know the whole story, but it starts back with my father as an immigrant coming to the United States with nothing, of course, in the year 1900, became fascinated by the technology called radio, served in the First World War, but got involved in radio with RCA, made a terrific amount of money between 20 and 29, ended up with even a picture in my book shows him with his own airplane, but he had buildings and everything else. 29, 33, lost everything, as he said. He tells me, he said, Ed, I had to decide between committing suicide and driving to California. And for my benefit, thank God he drove to California. On the way to California, we get to the first fiction-seeming experience. He stayed with a cousin. He was unwelcomed in 1933. Nobody was welcome. But he, in a very short period of time, fell in love with the fifth or fourth of his five siblings, an 18-year-old girl, 15 years his junior. And they got married, and they traveled on to California, knowing that thinking that the streets were paved with gold. Obviously, they weren't. Father had the demons from him losing all his money. He also was a Middle Eastern type person, hard to live with, had trouble keeping a job because of obviously the depression. I was born in 36, supposedly the only positive thing in that particular period. And on my birth certificate, I was born to an unemployed father and a homemaker mother. Father being difficult, having trouble keeping a job, traveling all over the country. My mother, at age 24, which was quite exciting and interesting at that point, she decided to get divorced. And she got a divorce and got custody of little Eddie and took him from Los Angeles back to St. Louis. My father got $5 a week of alimony and child support, and he got visiting rights on Sunday. One of the first Sundays, he drove 1,800 miles on Highway 66, which is on the front of my book, to take me to the park or to the movies. But instead of doing that, he basically kidnapped me. Got back on Highway 66, took me to Los Angeles, told my mother never to look for us, and basically told me at age 3 that she had died. And I believed that for 57 years, that she had passed away. We lived together for a couple of years. He was a merchant. He basically transferred from radio, the technology, to being a radio operator aboard a ship. And so he was a merchant marine. And during the first couple of years, he spent most of his time at sea, and I spent time with neighbors and friends, no relatives. When the war broke out, he was supposedly drafted or volunteered to become an officer in the Merchant Marines, and I was put then into Catholic foster homes. During the next 5 years, I spent time in 5 different Catholic foster homes, which varied from cold and abusive to warm and caring. The first one was cold and abusive. It was almost Dickinsonian, as I remember some of the things that occurred. When the war was over, he wanted me back. I was then with a foster family, which was actually wonderful, very short period of time though. I flew back alone on a DC-10 to New York, 5 stops. I met the father. We spent the summer in the YMCA on 34th Street in New York. We didn't have many Princeton graduates at the time. And then a hotel room in Coney Island for the year of 1946-47. I went to local public school, and Dad looked for, land-based work. Couldn't find anything. And actually, the summer of 47, I was supposed to stay with a neighbor while he went to sea, and neighbor lady changed her mind. I ended up staying by myself for some period of time, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, traveling, living in the hotel, having him provide meals for me in the local delicatessen, going to giant baseball games, going to museums and libraries. Come September, neighbor lady didn't want to take me again, so he, from the sea, basically got me into an orphanage in Far Rockaway, and I spent the next 3 years there, trading in my hotel room with a private bathroom for a room with 50 boys in it, with a shower, and 10 shower heads and 10 sink type toilet. But the orphanage, I got for the first time in my life community and consistency, and it was part of a wonderful local public school, and I thrived. At age 15, my father abandoned me for the 4th time in our existence when he totally disappeared, and I aged out of that orphanage. So I became a ward of the state. And at that time, luckily, some wonderful social worker lady, instead of sending me to any place like a reform school in those days or horrible type institutions, I got into another very good orphanage in Yonkers, New York, and which was 4 or 5 blocks from an excellent high school. And that changed my life. I got the epiphany that the way out of this whole thing was private colleges, because 80% of the kids at that high school went to college, private college. And I then applied to every scholarship there was. There were only 2 or 3 at the time. And luckily I got the NRTC scholarship. There's only 1,200 given in the United States, but luckily I got that, and went off to the University of Rochester. And from there on, it's a good story. But that is a background, and people say, oh, isn't it horrible? Well, in many respects, now that I've written the book, I found that many of my disadvantages became advantages. In fact, I preach to my friends, make sure, since your kids are very comfortable, make them uncomfortable at points in time. Give them challenges while they're young. And they overcome challenges while you're young, you end up having those capabilities when you're older. And I can go into that. I mean, being 18 or 20 different places before I was 18 years old made me pretty adaptable. I always kid about this. You go from one Catholic school, schoolyard to another, you're pretty adaptable because you find your way around pretty quickly or else. So that's sort of a thumbnail of the whole thing. My dad did what he could do. He had a lot of bad breaks. One of my ghostwriters wanted me to hate him. I didn't hate him. I loved him. But he did abandon me, I say 4 times in the first 16 years.
Let me, before I want to hear more of the story. It turns out I grew up very close to you. I was in Howard Beach. You were in the Rockaways. So
yeah, we were in the Rockaways from 47 to 51. I had my freshman year at the Rockaway High School.
Yeah, I was very close to you between 69 and 83.
Yeah, okay.
So before I hear the rest of the story, because I do want to know what happened regarding meeting your mom, et cetera, my question would be for parents or soon-to-be parents out there. I love what you said around what you thought were disadvantages became advantages. And, not everybody should or could ship their kids out, right, to go live with different people and toughen up the way you went through it. But we could make the kids take cold showers. We could make the kids eat more salad. We could make them go to bed early. We could have them learn Mandarin, do things
they don't. We could have them go
to
Outward Bound. We could have them go to Knowles. We have them get a job in a mental hospital. We could send them, as I sent my son to a library in London for the summer. I sent my daughter on a Knowles trip down to the Baja with 6 other girls. My son and I went down the Green River together. Also just paying attention to what you do every day, because you basically have to give them trials, because when they get out in the real world, there aren't any answers to a lot of questions that you get in the real world. You have to have gone through difficult periods and been successful going through them in order to cope with those things. So there's disadvantage. The resilience is a muscle. The more you use it, the younger you get to use it, the better off you are. Perseverance, self-confidence. Getting through certain kinds of things when you're young. And being placed, also testing yourself in different environments. I sent my oldest son to Belgium for 6 months, live with a Belgian family, going to a place where you don't speak the language. It was a wonderful experience. The whole world becomes dark because, everybody's talking and you don't understand what's going on. So you're forced to learn the language. And in every language, as you know, words mean different things. I always kid people, there's no word for like in French. Everything is love. They're more emotional, and that tells you something about the environment or the country or the people. But I think that was important. And in my life, I look back, I took Latin when I was in high school and nearly flunked it, but I tried it. I wanted to be a physicist. So my sophomore year in college, I took advanced physics and nearly flunked that and got that out of it. So you spend time bouncing off these walls until you find out who you really are or what you really want to do.
Can you find who you are without going through trials and tribulations and obstacles? Like, if you sat on the couch and you watch Netflix and you're in a climate controlled environment and everything's going well, can you find out who you are?
I don't think so. See, that's why I preach outward bound and Knowles. I preach putting people in environments where they're uncomfortable. That's when you really get to know yourself. You know who you are. Sleeping on the ground in the Green River, and figuring out to make sure you're the first guy on the line to the outhouse. Those are the kinds of things. Or even sitting they put you on a rock in the middle of the rapids, and you're stuck there. If they didn't want to come and get you, you wouldn't get off that rock. There's no way to get off that rock. So those are the kinds of experiences I think are very important that you have as early as possible, because if you'll pardon me, Joe, I'll give you my impression about self. I believe there are 4 parts of life: self, work, self, family, work, and community, which is giving back. And you can never get perfect balance of those 4 things. But self basically is a combination of your genes. You have no control over that. That's your mom, dad, Uncle Harry, Aunt Matilda, and then those genes interfacing with what happened to you in your first 15 to 20 years, which again, you have very little control over. So somewhere in that 17 to 20 area, you start to get a hold of it and say, here's who I am. This is the reason I'm this way. Do I want to be this way? Can I change it enough to find out what I want to do? And that's where I've tried to focus my efforts, is my writings and my conversations with people, is that somewhere along in that period, that late teen period, you have to get a hold of it and try to understand yourself. For me, for example, I was always angry. And I tried to figure that out. Why? Well, if I spent 18 years saying, why me? Why am I an orphan? Why am I in a foster home? Why don't I have the clothes? Why didn't I learn how to ride a bicycle? So I was angry. I'm still a little angry, but I understand it now. And so that people have to sort of, look at themselves in the mirror. You do that a little bit of sit on the couch and think about that. And that's why I believe in writing things down. You write down your behaviors. Write down, what you want to do and don't want to do. But those are little things. It's each person's so unique. That's why I think that my second book is so important. There's no answers. There's just questions. And each person will answer the question a little differently.
Classic FitAid, new summer edition flavor. Hawaiian Nectar is a summer vacation for your taste buds with each sip. Take a one-way ticket to Recovery Town with this limited edition flavor. Certified non-GMO tested, vegan, paleo-friendly, certified gluten-free, kosher, and never contains any artificial flavors or sweeteners. The FitAid Recovery Blend features glutamine, glucosamine, turmeric, BCAAs, omega-3s, CoQ10, full B complex, and electrolytes. Perfect for after the race, gym, hiking, or biking. Visit lifeaidbevco.com and enter code SPARTAN20 at checkout to get 20% off. FitAid Hawaiian Nectar plus free shipping. FitAid, an official partner of the Spartan Race Series.
We like to say at Spartan, we put on challenges where you meet yourself. You get to know who you are. And so I love what you're saying, because people are probably going to think I paid you to say all this.
No, I'm going to tell you, athletics are one of the places you really learn. Standing over that 9-foot putt, that you got to make, or that basket you got to shoot, or that last mile you got to run. That's, as far as I'm concerned, my life. I look back at that as being, one of the great experiences. You learn really who you are, what you can handle.
I had a bunch of people comment on a post recently online where I suggested a way that parents should put their kids into sports. And there were many comments, well, what if our kid doesn't want sports? And I thought about it last night and I thought, Ed, everybody has to play a sport. Like the human body has to sweat. It has to challenge itself. It has to be able to balance. So like, I don't think there's an option. It's like saying, I don't feel like breathing.
But
right?
not only the body, Joe, the mind.
Right.
Sitting over that 9-foot putt, or being with no time left, having a foul shot, or run. You got to get that last mile to finish the marathon. My daughter ran a marathon in San Francisco. That experience for her was unique because she never really fully they'll tell you never to run a marathon before you run a marathon. Well, she did 18 miles, and this time she did 26. I mean, the last 5 or 6 miles was a real builder, and she'll never have an experience like that. No, sports are, and I also think sports are the other part of your life where you really get satisfaction personally, because in many respects, most other thing we do with people, it's not completely satisfying by definition because the other person has to get sort of the game. But when you do something yourself in sports, you're the person. Whether it's shooting a basket or sinking a putt or running a mile, I think that's what and also I find sports saves kids' lives too, because there's something that they do well, that they can do, that they want to do. And my oldest son is a scuba diver, and whenever he has free time, he goes down into the water, and it makes him a different person, and that's what he likes to do.
I agree. We all need that. Tell us about this latest book, The 4 Ps.
Well, the 4 Ps was something I was the chairman of the board of the University of Rochester. And, when you're the chairman of the board, you got to make talks. You have to have a thing to say. And I wanted to develop a message. So I went back and I looked at all my yellow pads that I basically used to make decisions all my life. And I kept coming up with 4 or 5 words: passion, principles, partners, plans, and then purpose. And last, not peace, but only use the 4 Ps. And I started to give a talk saying, I want you people to sort of find your passions, find what makes you get up early in the morning, find what makes you take 2 steps at a time, find your principles, find those things you want to live by. For example, I was taught the golden rule with the golden ruler, at Catholic schools. But, principles run your whole life. I mean, and in fact, passion's the same way. They change, they morph. And I can go into that. And then find your partners. I found I was only as good as the people I surrounded myself with. And I found almost every one of my successes were because I wrote the plan down. And I didn't follow it 100%. I did write it down. There I could find out where I thought I was going so I could change it. But I just spend a minute on passions. And passion is an overused word, but it includes talents. It includes interests, likes, dislikes, and also environment, context. I mean, if you're in the Ukraine, you got a totally different set of passions than you do if you're in New York City. So, but the passions, basically, I wrote my passions down. I mean, I used to baseball, basketball, math, science, and girls when I was in high school. College, those started to morph after I found my freshman year that I couldn't be a professional baseball player and I was too small to be a basketball player. That morphed into intramural sports, which I kept but I also morphed in extra activities. And there I found I didn't know I found my passion. But I found my passion in extracurricular activities. I really loved putting people together to solve a problem, to create a product, to start a program. And I got a terrific kick out of it. I found out later on in life the reason I did is I really have a passion for helping people do better than they think they can. It's kind of corny, but it's really what turned me on. It also made me a good businessman because people always thought that, he's really in my camp. And I learned that by the morphing of my passions. And, obviously, each one of those passions morphing. And now I'm morphing even farther. I have a passion now to communicate ideas, this is a passion. Well, and again, principles, I spent 50 years on Wall Street, and you can relate to this. I really made up my mind I was going to live happy to live hidden. I was going to be the CEO, but no newspapers, no magazines, no TV, because I was going to focus on one thing: running the company, and actually going home for dinner at 5:30 at night. That was, because I'd be this balance between work. If you become a public figure and you start to drink ink, it sucks up your, because you've done it. And of course, that thing to live happy is live hidden is now thrown away. That's a principle I gave up when I'm going to try and sell books or sell ideas. I have to go out and, my daughter is very nervous about me going out into the real world now and actually telling my story. She said, somebody in your background will come up and say, he's not such a good guy. I said, well, I'm old enough that most of them are dead, so it's all right.
Principles is a good one, right? I love.
Well, principles to be a little bit. One of my favorite principles is that you can create almost anything. You can do almost anything if you don't care who gets the credit. But there's one corollary to that, which I found fabulous, which I pass on to people when they use it, is that try to deflect credit. When someone says to you, Joe, you've done a great job, the first thing you should think about is who you can also name who's really responsible.
Hey, Ed, I just figured out I worked for you on Wall Street.
Did you really?
Yes, I just figured it out. It's funny when I was looking at your name.
Yeah.
Early on, I said, "Gee, I knew an Ed Hajim.
There's only one in the world. So
you ran Firm & Cells.
You worked at Firm & Cells?
Yes.
Your name sounded familiar to me. I was going to say, as I rolled it around in my head, I said, where have I met this guy before?
That was my first job. You were amazing. You and your partner did an incredible job.
Well, we took something that was nothing and we made something out of it. We started with 70 employees, ended up 800, and we sold it to Xerox, bought it back, and sold it again to ING for $600 million. So everybody who followed made some money. So it was kind of a good deal.
I know the whole story. I used to go in with my suspenders on. It was my first job on Wall Street, and that morning meeting with the big wooden table at 7:30 in the morning. It was fantastic.
Oh, my God. This is really synchronicity. My God, that is something else. What did you do there? Were you an analyst? Or?
I worked everywhere. I worked on the floor. I worked on the trading desk. I sat in the analyst room for a bit when they wrote the Yahoo research, the first Yahoo research paper on the internet. I was only there for about a year. My mother got sick. My mother died of cancer, but I know the story well. You did a great job.
Steve Bletcher, who I hired at Lehman Brothers and came with me, he was a guy, what I call my favorite partner, a partner who can do things you can't do, who can do things better than you can do them. And the most important thing that a partner does is things that you may do well that you don't want to do. And he did that. And he was 6'5", Dartmouth graduate, and he spent 35 years with me. And without him as a partner, I mean, he's not quite as important as my wife, but almost as important as my wife, because he spent all this time with me. And he really was. He saved my life many times doing the right thing.
That is amazing. Well, I can't even believe we put 2 and 2 together here. So we didn't finish all the. Yeah, this is crazy. Give me the last 2 P's. We covered principles.
Partners is the third P. Find your partners. And the most important partner to find, in my mind, is P1. Is that someone to share your life with. It's a little different today than it was when I got married, but I think having someone who can support you, who you can support, who will basically share your life with you. I mean, she knows me better than anyone else, and we've made fabulous decisions together in real estate. For example, I left Greenwich in 2000 and right after 9/11 and moved into New York, bought a huge apartment in New York, sold a monster house in Connecticut, which was unsaleable for the next 15 to 20 years. We came to Nantucket. If you look out my window, I'm right on the channel in Nantucket. And, we came to Nantucket in 86, and she said, get a real estate agent. And it's been, the guy next door just sold his house for so much money you can't believe. And so, so we've made a lot of good decisions together. We had 3 children, and now we have 8 grandchildren, and that's a joy too. But so partners are very important. Partners, though, that's the partner for life. There's another partner in business, and there's another partner for, community, what I call giving back. And they're different. And my partner, Steve, at Firm & Cells, and my 2 partner Firm & Cells were people that basically helped me get where I'm going. When I went to Rochester, I needed a new set of partners. And it's the same kind of partners. Partners do things that you can't do. Partners things that you do better than you do, and partners that do things you do well, but you don't want to do. And those are the kinds of partners that I want. Also, in the partners chapter is the concept of a friend. If you can find, I tell seniors when I make talks to them, I say, look to the left and find someone you would like to spend the rest of your life with, you can compete with. And I had this fellow, Dick Wiedemeyer, who I was more important to him than he was to himself. I mean, when I talked to him, he'd always ask, he was dying. We did a Tuesday at Morey's for a year, And I would call him up and he'd say, "How are you, Ed? How are the children? Are you working too hard?" And he had a terminal disease. And then the final P, plans. I think that we should write down our plans, where we want to go and how we think we might get there, to keep testing that. Where do we really want to go? And I wrote a paper when I graduated from Harvard Business School. I predated Henry Kravis and so forth and leverage buyouts, but I hadn't written down that's what I wanted to do. But I ended up in the analyst business. I found I loved that even more, and that's another. But I put forward to people: please do not pay attention to titles. The difference between an analyst and an investment banker. I mean, in my book, I lay that out. I remember one of the guys saying to me, Goldman Sachs, he said, "You can't be an analyst. That's a gopher's job. You got to be a banker." Well, in those days, bankers went down to the basement and spent 8 years carrying someone's bag. Analysts, within 3 months, I was on the road, talking to CEOs. And then when I got to Lehman Brothers, I was a banker. I'd have to go through that trial. But and also in engineers. I mean, being an engineer, I could have worked in a plant wearing a big white suit with a plastic helmet, or I could have been an applications research engineer, which I was, solving problems for polyethylene and polypropylene. So each of these words that people use, kids have to figure out, what that really means. What do you do Monday morning physically? And so I passed that on. So those are the 4 Ps. And then if you get the 4 Ps right, you end up with purpose and peace and pleasure. I've got my next book will be another 4 Ps, I guess. I get a kick out of it because you want something to remember too. It's easy to remember the 4 Ps. And if you write them down, how is my passion changing? What new principles do I have to have? Like right now, my biggest principle is gratitude. I'm really grateful for everything that's been given to me. But it's been about the last 10 or 15 years that I've sort of really begun. People ask me how I am because I'm old. I say I'm grateful. I don't give them an organ symphony about my shoulders or my knees or whatever else. Anyway, I babble on. Sorry, Joe. But
no, it's fine. I found in my life the same thing. If I just am grateful that I woke up this morning, everything else is easy.
That's right. It is. You just say, and every day is a gift. And but what's lovely about this whole experience, you're changing lives, and I'm just so excited about what you're doing, and I've started to change a few lives too. People have written me letters in my book, and one woman said, my daughter was confused. She read your book. Now she's a freshman at Notre Dame. And I got a letter from her. So that pays the bills. It almost takes care of everything I do. You want to change. You want to basically at this stage of life, or all your stages of life, try to change a few lives. And I'm just focused on this because what's changed my life. This sort of senior, junior, and high school. If you can get them through that little lump into college, or into a school. I'm also I'm a wild proponent of what people used to call vocational education. I'm going to call it professional education. And we just had 15 professional scholars out of the Nantucket High School, out of our golf club, that we're going to pay for the next year's tuition. And you want to be a chef? Costs you $60,000 a year to go to Johnson Wells.
Right.
So, and the chef on our video, I mean, he just brought everybody to tears. He said, "I love what I'm doing. I can't wait to make food for people," so on and so on and so on.
I love it. Well, you and we had a brief moment in our lives together. We worked together, and now we're both changing lives.
So you only stayed a year. You only stayed a year there.
Yeah, a year.
Only a year at Firm Itself.
Just a year. Yep. My mom passed away. Yeah. Up in Ithaca, New York, not far from Rochester. So it is funny. But so how do people find the book?
Well, Amazon is the easiest way. Simon & Schuster distributes it. If you go to my website, you can punch a button and it'll go right to Amazon to buy the book. We have been very lucky. I mean, I don't know anything about the publishing business except that I lose a lot of money being in it. But we've sold 15,000 of the first book, and we're in about 7,000, 8,000 of the second book. It's been pretty well received. I'm now in 12 different schools, and our goal is very modest. We'd like to have every freshman in the United States to read it. So we're now applying to all the college placement offices and see whether I'm trying to create actually a course. We have a course at Rochester now called Life Design. I truly believe a freshman took a very short course in life design It would help that person through an entire college period and would have basically maybe better direction when he or she left school.
I'm going to connect you, Ed, with a friend of mine who runs a national wrestling program, and he's got access to about 180,000 coaches across all sports. I'm going to connect you guys on an email, and we'll see if we can't get a program plugged into all these schools.
Hey, that is terrific. Thank you very much. Well, I guess I believe in what I call synchronicity, and because all my life, if you read my book, you'll find out that when one phase ended, another one started. I mean, I basically blew up a company at Capital Research. I have some excuses, but I went to a wedding. I met Bob Foreman and E.F. Hutton. He said, "Forget this mutual fund business. Come to work for me as a senior vice president." And sort of after 3 years, and I told him that he's really making a mistake by not going into institutional business. Lehman Brothers called me up and said, "Do you want to be, youngest member of the board of directors ever and a partner and blah, blah, blah." And so Lehman Brothers finished. And after Lehman Brothers fired me, Furman Cell said, "We need someone to run the company." And that was I pivoted at 47 away from the big time to what I really love to do, which was to run a small company. And that's why the pivoting thing is so important. You know that. You pivoted completely. When I was 72 years old, when I came to the chairman of the board of University of Rochester, I closed my hedge fund because I really wanted to pivot into what I call the community giving back. And this was, very few people get opportunities to do it in a big way. Rochester's a $4 billion enterprise, 30,000 employees, 10,000 students. You get a chance to really make a difference if you can. I didn't do that again. The fact and credit the president was an unbelievable whirling dervish, and we raised $1.3 billion, but that's that's an environment. And you go through life, you do a little business, you do a little Rochester, the golf course to me is one of the great experiences of all times. I mean, we're the largest charity on the island, and within a couple of maybe next year, the year after, we'll have 100 kids which we're providing fund for in various colleges or schools. And that came out of no place. And yet, and 500 families, have been changed. Their lives have been changed on the island because of the club.
Ed, you are amazing. Ed, you're amazing. Thanks for doing this. People are going to find the book. I'm going to connect you with my buddy Mike Moyer, and we'll see if we can get this stuff into a bunch of schools, because I love the 4 Ps. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your comments, for your kind words.